In 2012, I was doing my placement at a high school downtown. And this high school, I was placed in a special needs program. So the students were grade 9 students, and I was free to do whatever kind of lesson I wanted. So I decided to talk to these grade 9 students about how sexual orientation, biological sex, and gender identity all fall along a spectrum rather than being understood as binaries. That, sexual orientation doesn't just have to be heterosexual or homosexual. It can fall within a spectrum. Similarly, gender identity doesn't have to be just male or female. And even biological sex doesn't have to be simply male or female. That many people are born with biological components that might fall in between those two categories, and that those folks can be referred to as intersex on a biological level. And so I was speaking about these things to these grade 9 students who had various, developmental and physical and intellectual challenges. And one student in particular, who at the time identified as a young man, he had a lot of questions and interest in the category of intersex when I mentioned the biological spectrum. And he kept asking, well, what is that? Can you speak more about that? And what does that look like? Why? How could it be that people are not born one way or the other? And what do people like that? What are their lives like? And I was very enthusiastic about engaging with him because given that they're grade 9 students, I was a little bit apprehensive about how such a lesson would go, whether everybody would just be reduced to giggles and not take it seriously. But it seemed to go really well. Once the lesson concluded, the student came up to me afterwards and told me that he really appreciated the lesson and that it allowed him to think about himself in a different way. And that for a long time, he had been struggling with his own gender identity, that he frequently felt that he wasn't quite being as masculine as he was expected to be, that he preferred to spend time with his female cousins and doing things that are conventionally considered to be female pastimes, and which caused him a lot of distress. And once we had this discussion, he said that it allowed him to conceive of the possibility that he may be intersex, and that it opened up this world of different possibilities. He right away wanted to use the lunch hour to call his aunt, who he considered himself to be very close to, and tell her about this discovery about himself. And he wanted us, both me and the other teacher, to be in the room with him to provide that kind of moral support. But I think that for me really hit home how young people who might be struggling with issues of identity and self can be lost in the struggle if they don't have certain kind of bearings. And I think educators, especially progressive educators, have an obligation to, just as we provide bearings for other things of how to understand the world and ourselves, we also, gender identities and sexual orientation and biological sex are crucial bearings towards that understanding of self. So I was very inspired that a lesson like that could have such an immediate impact on someone.